feminism has been destroyed by Taliban and logic, and this is going to go well, isn't it? So here's the first one, which is the statement from the Taliban, talking about our women are Muslim, and therefore will be happy living under Sharia. You don't have to say Sharia law, by the way. Sharia means Islamic law, so you're saying Islamic law when you say Sharia.
You told me that yesterday, and it kind of blew my mind a little bit, because I've always called it Sharia law.
But the point I want to make with this section is Western institutions are made up essentially of slogans. The institutions we tried to set up in Afghanistan, they were empty, because all they were just empty slogans. And when they interacted with a real patriarchy, the Taliban, they completely destroyed themselves. There was no resistance whatsoever, institutionally, let's say. So this is the leader of the Taliban giving a press conference in which he said, our women are Muslim and therefore will be happy living under Sharia. It's a sound argument, if they do agree with that. We'll get into that in a minute. I love how Disclosed TV, the comment below this, they added that unlike Biden's speech yesterday, the Taliban spokesman took a lot of questions after his speech. Chat energy for the Taliban. Like, yeah, questions, come ahead. Yeah.
So the Taliban have more internal accountability to their rule than Joe Biden.
Yes. So far, that if you're putting it on the same timeline, so far the Taliban have held themselves more accountable to the public than the President of the United States.
2021 is a weird time.
A bunch of barbarians are looking better. This is why I'm not simping for them either, which I've seen some people being like, yeah, they're based, and I don't think they're
I
based.
saw Nick Fuentes talking about
he's
how
wrong.
much yeah, of course he is.
Anyway, so let's go to the next one. So one of the questions that was asked was, do you think the people of Afghanistan will forgive you for the explosions and suicide bombings? And the response from the Taliban was, collateral damage happens. Again, this is what I mean by like the big PP energy they have publicly. There's so much conviction in themselves that when they're confronted with something they've done that's awful, they're just like, I don't care. It's like, we really need to have that for liberal institutions, that conviction in ourselves.
I don't think justifying suicide bombing is something we need for liberal institutions.
That's not what I said. I said the conviction that they have in their own ideology,
I know, yeah.
to the point that they will defend themselves whenever. I'm embarrassed that liberals and conservatives don't have that. Socialists have it. I mean, remember earlier, Richard Bergen, we should pay reparations to the Taliban. He's got so much conviction about his nonsense.
I mean, you could also put it in terms of zealotry. I mean, you could be a zealot for socialism and Islam, but...
I don't want to call it zealotry, because it is consistent within liberal ideology to be liberal. That's the point. We are currently not, and that's the thing we need to do. Anyway, so let's move on. So the idea that he's not wrong about the idea that women want to live under Sharia in Afghanistan, he's not wrong. By the polling. The polling the West did under the Western regime in Afghanistan. 2013, Pew Research. They went to Afghanistan and polled the people there, and in this poll they polled a whole bunch of Muslim countries, but Afghanistan was in there, that the Afghan people, which I presume included women, I can't imagine Pew were not polling women into this, they agreed that there is only one way to interpret Sharia. 99% of them want Sharia. They also believe that adultery should carry the death penalty. Apostasy, leaving the religion, should carry the death penalty. And also, if you steal something, if you're a thief, you should get corporal punishment. Wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful people. Barbarians, but there's the point. If they actually do want Sharia...
Why can't they have it?
They get what they deserve. Let's move on. So this is the point being raised by some Western lookers as well. So this chap, if we get the next one up, so he says we have 20 years of experienced people saying don't do nation building, it don't work. And then troops returning from Afghanistan confirming that it don't work. And then the establishment saying that, well, we're just going to ignore this and ignore the feedback, thinking that they know one weird trick that will work. It won't work. You cannot build these nations from the ground up. Because the thing is, you're not building from, like, the buildings up. You're building from the psyche up. You've got to get them in the frame of mind of even thinking about basic things like duty or not being Islamic when it comes to adultery or honor killings or all the rest of it. There's so much stuff on just an ideas level that is not going to be there and isn't going to be there for 100 years. That's how long you're looking at it.
There's a certain amount of arrogance that goes into the thinking that you can even change their minds. Like, you go in as a foreign invader, and what makes you think that they're going to be anything but hostile towards you and your ideas?
Well, you can prove it if, say, in Germany or Japan, for example, and you destroy them and make them see the horrors of their own regime. We weren't able to do that. We weren't able to do that at all.
If anything, we did the opposite.
Also, there's the component that Islam is extremely effective at being internalized and being protected from outside forces, but it's a whole other conversation. But I don't think this could be demonstrated any better than some of the images that we've seen coming out of Taliban. Let's go to the next one. Look at that. So there's a guy with an AK, presumably Taliban, pointing his AK at a bunch of women, girls, kids, some guys. And behind them, they have the UN Sustainable Goals poster. And number 5, gender equality. And then the symbol of equality there.
Yeah, that's a pretty stark image, isn't it? I mean,
I love the guy who quoted this as well. So he says, globalist virtue signaling and weak socialist engineering meets sledgehammer of cruel reality. Yeah. Yeah, that's what it really is. When interacting with something that is a real patriarchy, utterly collapses. I mean, the idea that we could go over and promote gender equality anyway is such a stupid idea. I mean, we are there to promote gender fairness. So, fairly treat women. That's the idea we should be promoting. The idea that we go over with this socialist nonsense of equality and try and implement that, that's mad.
I think
men and women aren't equal. They can't be. But they can be treated fairly.
Way too high level as well, in that they don't even have things like proper sanitation and basic infrastructure. They're not going to be worried about gender equality. It's so ridiculous.
But also the people who can understand it, out of those who even can, would be like, this is obviously wrong, because it is. You can treat women fairly and men fairly according to under the law. You cannot make them equal. That's not possible. But whatever. This is the West's problem. We can't figure out what we even want or can promote for the world. So we go to the next one. Let's go. We see them covering up women as well. So you can see them the Talibanization of Afghanistan. This is all overnight. That's the thing. Like, just overnight, the entire country is changing back to where it was before the Westernness turned up.
It kind of amazed me how people just preempted and knew exactly what they had to do to kind of keep their heads down. They were just like, yep, we've got to paint over these women. We've got to grow out our beards. I remember reading about hotel staff who were previously clean-shaven, and then they all mysteriously started growing beards out of nowhere.
But this is also the polling. Like, if you just poll these people there, they believe in Islamic values. They don't believe in Western values, liberal values. They don't believe in common law. They believe in Sharia, Islamic law. So the idea that we expect them to think like Westerners is just absurd. Anyway, let's go to the next one so we can just see more of them covering up women here. It's not just a trick of the light or something. And then we have CNN before and after, of course. Just the day changes.
They're trying to debunk this as fake news for some reason.
Why?
Saying it was lacking context.
No, one's the day before the Taliban get there. I can see in the title. And then the next one is the Taliban comes to a stunning... What?
It's the fact checkers have gone nuts for some reason about this. I don't know why.
They've always been nuts, haven't they?
Well, of course, yeah. But especially so, you can see it with your own eyes, and they're like, no.
Yeah. We also have the British version if we get this. So yeah, I did like the memes coming out of there. People were half expecting Saki to come out looking like the next one. Let's get the next one up. Yeah, there we go. Boy, we must respect their culture. Okay, Saki. Right. So if we go to the next one as well, we have the guys chanting Allahu Akbar, and then they're just like, yeah, get lost woman from the CNN group. Let's play this clip again, just because, again, I find it really interesting.
They're just chanting death to America, but they seem friendly at the same time. It's utterly bizarre. They've just told me to stand to the side because I'm a woman.
But she doesn't put up any protest whatsoever. That's what I found interesting about that.
Well, they did have AKs.
I understand. But what's interesting is there's no, like, conviction in a voice being like, you know, I should go around or something. It's just like, no, I'm just going to stand to the side. It's just what it is. Like, as soon as you interact with a real patriarchy, it collapses. Everything.
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, the threat of violence is a very real thing.
Yep. Yeah, it is. Anyway, so there's also the fact that it's mostly peaceful chanting for Death to America. But anyway, there's also the response I saw, Romo, when we talked about Joe Biden saying, I'm not going to die for women's rights in Afghanistan. Just, why would I?
Fair enough.
Reality. Some actual reality there. And if we go to the next one here, you can see what was Nancy Pelosi talking about how we're supposed to respect their culture. Respect their culture? What culture? The barbarian culture.
This respect their culture stuff as if all cultures are created equal. Like, should we respect the people in Papua New Guinea that cannibalise their neighbours? Should we respect that aspect of their culture? Is that something worthy of respect?
But I also love how she says in here there's that we need concern for the inhumane treatment of women and girls. But as I've shown earlier, there was a massive inhumane treatment of boys, as in they were raping them. The police were raping them, and this was known by the administration, presumably by people like Nancy Pelosi who know so much about Afghanistan. Well then, that's interesting, isn't it? Women and girls are the focus of her tweets about respecting their culture, but when, for the last 20 years, they've been raping boys. Who cares about that? Anyway, Let's go on to the White House, who also decided to take on some weird nonsense out of this. So the State Department calls the Taliban to form an inclusive and representative government. What an empty man.
Like, got to be joking, right? Does
no,
he actually believe that that's going to happen?
Of course he doesn't believe it, but it's just, it looks like such a, it's a perfect example of the skin suit, where it's just this man who is an empty vessel. Just, the ideology is talking. We need
he looks so
government.
passionate about what he's saying, though. I mean, really, really exudes care and passion for his beliefs.
Yeah, it's obvious not even they believe what they're saying. But the weird thing is the Taliban have kind of learnt this facade as well. So we go to the next one. You see the Taliban talking about this. So a Taliban official told a female TV presenter, quote, "I am still astonished that people were afraid of the Taliban." We'll leave that there for a minute. The interview, remarkable given the Taliban's history of subjugating women, was part of a broader effort to present a more moderate face to the world. More moderate face. More moderate Taliban face. Not reality, of course, because the way the Taliban's going to treat people.
Moderate and Taliban shouldn't be uttered in the same sentence.
We're the moderate Taliban. I can't believe it's not Taliban. Anyway, let's go to the next one. So they've also learnt this trick of just let's put the pronouns in the bio, let's say. Taliban spokesman tells AP that the militants are holding talks aimed at forming an open, inclusive Islamic government. An inclusive Islamic government.
It includes all kinds of men.
Muslim men. And very specific kinds of Muslim men. Apparently we've swallowed this for some weird reason. If we can get the next one up, this is the British Chief of Defence of Staff talking about this, and he says that the Taliban want an inclusive... Sorry, the Taliban want an Afghanistan that is inclusive for all. And I've seen the interview, and he does say it. And you can see Kay Burley sat across from him. I mean, all the problems with Kay Burley. She even looks at him like, Are you high? like he says it with conviction. It's like, well, we have to give them time. They might form an inclusive government. And it's just like, really? Who's stupid enough to fall for this? Good God.
The Taliban are pretty wise to be using these kinds of terms to kind of win over credibility from our institutions in the West, because it very much targets, the US and the UK, where this kind of rhetoric is commonplace, and they clearly understand who's going to be their opposition. Of course they do. I mean, it's not really surprising, but the fact that they're saying this really goes to show that we underestimated them, because they're
smart actors.
Yeah, they're trying to do this to get legitimacy in the eyes of the West, to become the legitimate government, aren't they? They're trying to secure their position, and through saying this kind of stuff, it makes people a bit more tolerant of them, even though they don't actually have to follow through with it. It's all hot air.
So, wondering who is stupid enough to believe this. Apparently the UN is stupid enough to believe this, so let's go to the next one. UN offers a job opportunity. The UN is looking for someone to advance gender equality in Afghanistan city controlled by the Taliban. The Taliban are taking over, and the UN's like, yeah, we need someone to go in there and take over the job of promoting gender equality. Again, no, you can promote fairness along gender lines, you cannot promote equality along gender lines. But also someone I saw commented, what happened to the last person who had that job? Don't talk about that.
The UN is promoting suicide, basically.
Yeah. Also, the reality on the ground is, of course, that the Taliban are being the Taliban. We have the CNN reporting this as well. I don't know why I'm saying the CNN today, but the Taliban has reportedly just got rid of all of the women on the streets because, well, they're implementing Sharia. But the women want Sharia, apparently, which, to be honest, I'm not in disbelief of. Like, if the people there, overwhelmingly when polled by the Americans in 2013, said, yeah, we want Sharia, well, the Taliban are offering it.
It'd be quite funny if that Pew Research poll, they just asked loads of men, do you want Sharia? Yes.
Anyway, so let's go to the next one as well. This is what I found interesting, that they've also picked up. So Taliban spokesman is educated on the talking points most of us are familiar with. Speaking at a press conference today, the spokesman slammed Facebook and big tech for censoring free speech.
They're growing on me, these Taliban folks.
No, still the bad guys. So,
of course they are, yeah.
If we go to the next one, he was being asked about stuff like this, Good Morning Caliphate that they've set up. They really should just rename it to Good Morning Caliphate. It'll be so good. Anyway, so they asked him a question about the fact that, well, are you going to have free open media in Afghanistan? And he responded by saying, this question should be asked of those who claim to be promoters of freedom of speech, who do not allow publication of all information. And he's talking about Facebook. Facebook are the ones who need to be asked about this.
I hate to say it, but he raises good points.
There's also the thing there is just, well, why did Facebook wait until now to ban the Taliban?
Yeah, it's a bit weird. Like, as soon as the public eye is on them.
Why are they not banned from Twitter? Also, what rules did they break on Facebook that they haven't broken on Twitter? What specific ones? Because they're all the same. They all work with each other to make sure the rules are the same. And if it's because that they're a terrorist group, why not the Iranian government? Why not the Pakistani government? Because there's the thing. They're now the official government of Afghanistan. And if you're going to argue, well, official governments, we can't ban them because people need to know, as they always do, except Donald Trump. Screw him. He's not important. But they're going to argue that. Well, you can't argue that either because they're in charge of the government now. They're not just some... Well, you could say they're a fringe terrorist group, but then so is the government of Iran and Pakistan, in my opinion. And also most of the world, let's be frank. But anyway, I thought I'd end this segment on a little bit of Pakistan delenta est. Pakistan, furthermore, Pakistan should be destroyed. Because, the PM had something to say, didn't he? Taliban have broken the shackles of slavery, says Pakistan PM.
Shackles of slavery?
Yes.
That's a bit... What? I don't even understand.
By kicking out the filthy Westerners.
Oh, right.
Who were enslaving the Taliban. Sorry. Enslaving the Afghan people. Freudian slip. And what's interesting, though, is his argument has some water in a very weird way, but I don't think he realizes it. Mr. Khan said that adopting someone else's culture was worse than actual slavery. He said, quote...
When they say that Pakistan gives safe haven sanctuaries...
Oh, no.
Sorry, autoplays. So he says, quote, when you adopt someone's culture, you believe it to be superior, and then you end up becoming a slave to it. Oh, really? Oh, really? Would you like to come and visit the UK, Mr. Khan? You can take it to Bradford, or Birmingham, or maybe Tower Hamlets. You can come and have a look about the kind of people who are enslaved to a foreign culture, and therefore that's worse than slavery, as you say. He added, you take over the other culture and become psychologically subservient. When that happens, please remember, it is worse than actual slavery. It is harder to throw off the change of cultural enslavement.
I don't think it's worse than actual slavery.
No, of course it's not. But I
hate to be controversial.
I love the Pakistani PM is like, yeah, so if you're being subjugated by a foreign culture, that's worse than slavery. And just everyone in Britain's like, in what? Like, come over here, come and have a look, and then tell us about how we're being enslaved and how we need to resist the slavers of Pakistan, shall we say. God. Anyway.
There are certain parts of this country that have many of his former citizens living here.
So, I mean, I guess a heavily based take from the PM, which is that if you are under Pakistani culture and you're not in Pakistan, you're a slave to Pakistan, and therefore you should resist Pakistani enslavement.
Bradford.
That's
all slaves now.
That's the Pakistani PM's opinion, not anyone else's. But okay. So I also wanted to mention that Pakistani Twitter was delighted with the Taliban takeover, and I can see why. If their own PM is celebrating it as a victory, as we've broken the shackles of Western Imperial, these are our allies, are they? Him and his country are allies of the West, are they?
No, of course not.
No. Pakistan delenta est.
If you enjoyed this segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can watch the full broadcast live every weekday at 1 PM UK time on lotuseaters.com.